Beyond the veil, background information. Adelia. You know, if there was a woman I would choose to marry that would not dishonour my beloved's memory, it would be your mother. Your face tells me everything, but what vampire would not want a countess that can control them with just one look, whose disinterest in any touch and dismissiveness to my advances makes conquering her all the more exciting? The thought that someone was able to not only marry her young, have 9 children with her, and capture her heart to the point she will reject all others, is there any greater challenge? A quote from Count Mercia Blesteman from Time to Wed. Last time he had Theodulus, and now meet his beloved who is the matriarch of the Viper clan, and some might argue a cause for a lot of the stranger aspects of her bloodline, the existence of a new vampire king, indeed the future arrival of demon dragons into their lives, for example. What do I think about Adelia? It's hard to explain, really. She's had to put on a facade for the protection of herself and others since young, and so to those not in her bloodline, she appears cold and is naturally pessimistic. However, she was based on a character me and my friend, the cause of the Viper clan, created to be a mate to a vampiric villain. But where Thea was supposed to be a villain and then turned into an underdog, Adelia's character did not alter, but her relationship with Thea became more important for her own sanity. But for now, just enjoy this profile. Name, Adelia Knightsbridge, later known as Adelia Viper. Position, half demon, half human, and from the worst of the demon side and perhaps the best of the human, Adelia is a being trapped between living her life as her own or under the sway of others. Story featured in the entire Viper clan, primarily in Foundations of Blood. Role, secondary protagonist in Foundations of Blood, but the clan matriarch in all others. Gender, female. Description, average height, olive skin, pale when hungered, long jet black hair, milky white eyes, elegant features considered highly attractive in the Victorian era, curves and an ample bosom. She has an elegant neck and long limbs, including long fingers, a delicate and soft touch, as well as gait, but her face is always drawn into either a vicious scowl that can curdle milk or a vacant despair that beckons others to stay away. Her clothing was always sombre, but she rarely wears anything but black, save at weddings. She never stops wearing a black lace choker with a cameo brooch at the centre that appears to be the image of a viper, but to Adelia a spell allows it to show the etched outline of the that she drew of him. Realm, the veil. Abilities. Adelia is half demon dragon. This means she devours the feelings of both hope and horror from those around her to feed herself, but it gives her strength that can influence her own reactions. She can read the emotions of others and thereby is able to know when someone is thinking badly of her and angry of her. She can read if someone is lying, and by absorbing people's emotions she can heal herself if she is touched, even killing them if they held on too long. She is almost immortal, but her dragon heritage makes her weak to iron wolves and angelic devices. She has strength and speed when she has confidence in herself to actually fight, but more than anything is a demonic ability around fires and nightmares. Her clear eyes can pull in the heat and strength of any blaze and direct it out at an enemy or object, as easily as if she were to breathe fire and has the potential to melt someone that angers her. But Adelia has only used the other method to kill. Adelia can absorb all the joy of a being and urge the darkest, scariest memories and nightmares to consume a being before manipulating the energy of their terror to make them burn from their own fear. She can literally make people scare themselves to death. Master? None. Personality. Silent, enigmatic, insular, and unsocial in the extreme, Adelia learned that the feelings of others could do too much when offered towards her and closed off to others. She was afraid of killing, afraid of hurting people, and afraid to actually have a life despite her actual desires to learn and enjoy the company of snakes. She is extremely intelligent and artistic, but the era she was born into suppressed this, and keeping silent and obedient was encouraged. She had dreams, but they would never be achieved until someone wiggled their way into her life through pure affection and honesty. When Adelia opens up, she can not only be strong and stubborn, but she can have a curious sense of humour, a temper if it is stoked, a very romantic side though rarely displayed, and she is a very affectionate mother and loyal partner. Relations. We'll keep this brief for only the important characters in Foundations of Blood, although I will include Tittle, he's in that book afterwards. Bakunawa, her mother, a demon dragon that she never remembered, but only knew from the dragon mask gifted to her and said to protect her. Adelia admittedly feels all her problems are because of that dragoness, and she finds it very hard to talk about her mother and consider the aspects of her because of it. She has hatred but love, because how could she not love a mother? But it has caused doubts on aspects of her own ability to be a mother, though she keeps these problems to herself. Sir Knightsbridge. Adelia loved her father greatly, despite the era he encouraged her mind and treated her as equal to him. But there was still a vacant aspect in the need for affection, and a thought that maybe her father resented or even feared her. She adored his jovial nature, however, and stayed beside him, nursing him and learning she could comfort someone as he passed away from malaria. So Ryder. At first she had a real respect for him, but very quickly the older she got, the more she was treated with malcontent and disrespect for being a woman, and still acting unlike one. When he understood her abilities, it was Ryder that bullied the aspect of gloves and hiding her face to the world because of her beauty, but she sensed he was already planning things over her. When her father died and she came into Ryder's care, Adelia's hatred was made all the more palpable by the venomous way he viewed her as a demon and yet an asset. Francis Ryder. The first real friend she'd ever had, and the first real thing like a brother to her. Adelia knew only happiness and delight from Francis in youth, and he was the only child not afraid to play with her, though he would be told off for touching her hand outside of its glove. It is his affection and trust in Theo and his insistence to aid them that the pair are able to develop their relationship, and Adelia is forever thankful and grateful to him. Theodulus Cartwright Fillmore. When they met, Adelia was shocked to see such a handsome being showing such kindness to the graves of others. Even though she knew what he was and the danger he could be, it was inevitable that he kept finding ways to communicate with her and make her feel so different. When he was able to heal her with his loving energy and not be killed, Adelia realised that there must be a reason to it, and it was indeed the happiest moment in her whole life. Tell us of Fillmore II. Simply put, she thinks he's vile, despicable, gross, abhorrent, and the most sorry piece of maggot-ridden flesh is still able to linger within the universe. She senses everything he thinks he can hide, and he's so much a liar and a cad to her that Adelia can both trust in his dishonesty and distrust his affection, save around her husband and her children, but she really, truly hates him. Tybalt Viper, her first child, and the pair have a curious bond. She found to her surprise that she could not read the emotions of Tybalt properly, unlike all her other children, and more shockingly, she has moments where she's sure he's in pain, but he only has to look at her harshly to terrify her. He reminds her both of herself with his cold, despondent manner, as well as his lack of interest in romance, but also of something more dangerous. She wants to know the secret he guards so closely and to understand his rage and sadism, but the one thing she truly knows is how much Tybalt loves his mother, and how he would never do anything to upset her or let others hurt her, and the same to his siblings. History. This I'll keep trimmed. Born in the Philippines to a dragoness and a human, Adelia was perhaps the most forbidden of forbidden hybrids to exist, and with the Iron Wolves coming to slaughter dragon demons, she was barely within her mother's warmth for a month before she and her father were sent away. Her father was an explorer. He'd fallen in love with Bacchanal and had forsaken his further travels of the Southeast Asian Vale to be with her. But when she sent him and the baby away, he headed for mainland Asia, where he continued his journeys and raised Adelia. He gave her to wet nurses for a while, but when they would become depressed and sickly, he would pull her away to another woman, but the same would happen until he found that cattle, donkey, goats, and even camels could produce milk that did not need to be taken from the cheek by the baby. As Adelia grew, her father was immune to her ability to drain people's emotions, but he and Adelia both learned the hard way how other children would fall ill when they touched her too often, how adults going to smack Adelia for seemingly hurting their child would scream out in agony as if they were struck, and Adelia would then smash out whatever was around her. Her father took her to the monks of Nepal when there, and they learnt of her demonic heritage, and she was wrapped up in thick robes for the first time in her life, and told she could not play with anyone. Adelia, though, was given books, and her father beckoned the local guides to teach their daughter too, and Adelia developed well, but though she made friends of other explorers at the time, she never had real friends. The only animals that could talk back to her and have fun with her, unaffected by her seeming disease, were snakes. Adelia soon began to obsess on learning about snakes, making many great friends amongst pythons, cobras, vipers, and other snakes, gaining her very first friends until the British Society called her father back. Here there was no snakes, but there was Sir Ryder, her father's best friend, and his son Francis. Bubbly, giddy Francis was eager to befriend Adelia, and the pair, both having lost their mothers young, made firm friends very quickly. With her in robes and always covered, Francis had no fear of cuddling her, and Adelia found herself enjoying physical contact and the company of another for the first time in her life. But always they would be scolded for any kind of play not suitable for a lady. In Victorian society, Adelia soon found herself being schooled in things suitable for a woman, but her interest in natural science and indeed in architecture, always wanting to build a suitable enclosure for the snakes in the zoological gardens, was shunted aside by her teachers. She gained governesses, but they were vicious and insulted her so regularly that they would even make the mistake to smack her until they would be ill and her father would replace them. Misery was soon overcoming her, as her father refused to take her away with him, though he would tell her all the amazing stories, and female society was not welcoming. She could hear their thoughts, feel their disdain for her perfect looks, and she paled as she drew away from all emotions and became as hard as stone on the outside, but fragile as glass beneath. When her father then fell ill with malaria, something he kept suffering since his adventures, He became sicker and sicker. The doctors said he would die, so Adelia gave her father palliative care. She was aided by Sir Ryder to help her father make up all his arrangements and also make up arrangements for herself, and she had a substantial inheritance to take in. But when her father died, Adelia was startled by what happened to her. She was at the service, watched her father be buried, but had to run to try and control her emotions, pitiful and despairing, as she tried to adjust her gloves when one was snatched by the wind and landed in the face of a handsome man standing in the statue of an angel, and something astonishing was about to happen. Final comments. As I wrote about Adelia, I began to see that I developed something interesting with her avoidance of others, and indeed her powers, something that curiously complemented the energy-feeding vampires. But I also saw familiarity with a favourite character from the X-Men series. You can all guess it's Rogue, of course. But Adelia had more luck when it came to romance, and certainly Adelia's demonic nature has a habit of making bad situations worse if anyone dares to cross her, as many will find out throughout the Viper series. Also, one of the requirements when making the character she was based on with my friend was that the character be asexual, so fitting that in with Adelia was actually rather interesting. So, if you wonder why she is still relatively cold with her husband and not very, well, sometimes she's not as smoochy, I suppose, as she could be. That's because she's supposed to be asexual, so it's kind of odd to pair her with a vampire when you think about their positions as lustful creatures, and she's like the complete opposite, but it worked well with Theo. Anyway, thank you for listening.